This is the homework help video for 1.3 puzzle time. You're supposed to be completing the odds on this assignment, so I'm going to work the evens just to help you guys out and make sure that if you need any extra examples that you have them. So the first problem that I'm going to work is problem number 2. So we have 6a minus 10 equals 3a plus 17. Okay. So when you look at this problem, you should notice first that there are variables on both sides of the equation. When you have variables on both sides, you need to make sure that you're moving all the variables to one side of the equation and all the numbers or the constants to the other. Then you'll have a one-step equation that you guys can just solve using inverse operations. So when I start out, I notice that 3a is smaller than 6a, so it'd be easy for me to move it to the left. So the opposite of a positive 3a is a negative 3a. Notice I'm still using inverse operations just like I have been for the last week and a half. So 3a and negative 3a will cancel, and then 6a minus 3a is 3a. Now if I moved my variables to the left, then I need to make sure I'm moving my constants, which are my numbers without variables, to the right. So the opposite of minus 10 is plus 10. So I'm going to add 10 to both sides. Positive and negative 10 will cancel out. And then 17 plus 10 is 27. Now I'm left with a one-step equation like I was working on, or like we were working on as a class the first week of school. So the opposite of multiplying by 3 would be to divide by 3. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And that will tell me that a has to be equal to 9. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and look at number 4. So for number 4, we have an extra step besides just starting to move variables and constants. So notice when I write the problem, I have 12 times b plus 2 equals 8 times b plus 5. The reason that I know that I have that extra step that I was talking about is I see those parentheses with numbers right outside. So the first step is going to be to distribute. Now remember, we talked about distributing the first week of school, and we've continued that discussion throughout this week. So distributing means you're multiplying the number that's outside the parentheses by the things that are inside the parentheses. So when I do that, I have 12 times b, which is 12b, plus 12 times 2, which is 24. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I have 8 times b, which is 8b, and 8 times 5, which is 40. Now it looks similar to the problem that's right above it. So I can just go ahead and start moving stuff around. So once again, I notice that 8b is smaller than 12b, so it would be easy for me to move it to the left. So the opposite of positive 8b is negative 8b. And notice I'm lining up my variables with my variables. 8b and negative 8b cancel, and 12b minus 8b is 4b. Since I moved my variables to the left, I need to move my numbers to the right. So I am looking at 24. The opposite of positive 24 is minus 24. Positive and negative 24 cancel. And 40 minus 24 is 16. Now once again, we're left with a one-step equation, and the opposite of multiplying by 4 is dividing by 4. When I do that, I find out that b equals 4. Okay. I am going to go ahead and do number 6, but I think I need a little bit more room, so I'm going to move on to another slide. Okay, so looking at number 6, one of the things that some people were asking me about last week that seemed to be a little bit of an issue is when we're dealing with a fraction. So this one says 3/4 times 12c minus 4 equals 15c plus 15. So when I see parentheses, I know I'm distributing. I'm just distributing a fraction. So when you distribute a fraction or when you multiply by a fraction, remember your numerator So 3 is going to get multiplied by 12, and then I'm going to divide that number by 4. So 3 times 12 is 36. Divided by 4 is 9. So I have 9c. And I did that by doing 3 times 12 divided by 4. Okay? Then I'm going to do 3 times negative 4, which is negative 12, divided by 4, which is negative 3. So I have minus 3 equals 15c plus 15. Now once again, I'm moving all my variables to one side and my constants to the other. Now this time, 9c is smaller than 15c, so I'm going to move this variable to the right. The opposite of a positive 9c is a negative 9c, so I'm going to subtract 9c from both sides. 15c minus 9c is 6c. Since I moved my variables to the right, this time I need to move my constant to the left. So the opposite of positive 15 is minus 15. Those cancel, and negative 3 and negative 15 make negative 18. Now I'm left with a one-step equation, and we know that the opposite of multiplying by 6 would be to divide by 6. So c is equal to negative 3 in this case. Okay, why don't you pause the video and see if you can do number 8, and then you can check your work with mine. Okay, so this one was a long one, so let's talk about it. So the first thing that I did is I went ahead and I distributed my 3. So 3 times 2d was 6d. 3 times negative 8 was negative 24. Then on the right side, I brought down my 11d, but I had to distribute this negative 18. So make sure that you did negative 18 times d, which is negative 18d, and negative 18 times negative 3, which gives me positive 54. Then I noticed that I have variables on the same side of the equation right here, so I went ahead and combined those. So 11d minus 18d is negative 7d. Now, at this point in my equation, it looks like the ones we've been doing. So I went ahead and I moved my 7d to the other side by adding, because that's the opposite of minus. Those cancel, and I got 13d. Since I moved my d's to the left, I needed to move this negative 24 to the other side by adding, and that's where 78 came from. And then I had a one-step equation. The opposite of multiplying by 13 is to divide by 13, and when I do that, I find out that d was equal to 6. Okay, so that was a problem that reviewed everything that we've been talking about. It had distribution, it had combining like terms, we had to move variables and numbers, and then we had to use our inverse operations to isolate the variable. So number 10 is very similar, but it's got some fractions, so I want to walk you through that on the next slide. Okay, so let's look at this problem here. So on the left side, everything's all cleaned up for me already. So I just have my 3/5 e minus 6. But on the right side, I know I need to distribute. So I'm going to multiply negative 2/5 times e. And then when I do negative 2/5 times negative 10, remember, you do negative 2 times negative 10, which is 20. And 20 divided by 5 is 4. So that got rid of the parentheses, so now I have plus 4 minus 7. Well, when you see that, hopefully you guys notice that right here, I could go ahead and simplify that. So I'm going to have 3/5 e minus 6 equals negative 2/5 e, and then 4 minus 7 is negative 3. Okay? All right, so now I need to move my negative 2/5 e to the other side by doing the opposite. So opposite of negative is positive, so I am adding. And once again, they're being really nice to us because they gave us a common denominator. So when you're adding fractions with common denominators, which you have to have a common denominator, you add your numerator. Well, 3 plus 2 is 5, and you keep your denominator. So we have 5/5 e minus 6 equals negative 3. Now, 5 over 5 is just 1. So I'm left with E minus 6 equals negative 3. Now I can just move negative 6 by adding, because that's the opposite. And I find out that E had to equal 3. Okay, hopefully working the evens on this will help you guys complete the odds. If you have any questions and this video doesn't help you, then please come in for tutoring. I hope you have a great week.